Thank you for joining us here today. We're going to talk about collaborative R&D and discuss whether we need to go back to the drawing board and rethink how it is supported and incentivized at the European level. Now, obviously, Europe is currently re-examining its approach to global competitiveness, and we know this is going to be one of the key issues for the new European Commission. And this has been made clear by the Competitiveness Compass just last week. But the Competitiveness Compass does not really mention collaborative R&D as we know it. It does not mention FP10, the successor of Horizon Europe, which is currently the biggest funding vehicle for collaborative R&D, at least in the EU budget. The Compass simply says, the future EU research budget will provide targeted support to industrial competitiveness with a more strategic and less bureaucratic approach. Now, as far as I know, it's all still very much up in the air, right? So perhaps this is a good time to sit down and talk about what needs to change and perhaps what doesn't need to change. We will question whether changes are needed, and if so, what they should be. We'll ask what the best ways are to boost industry involvement in collaborative R&D and explore ideas about how all of it should be governed. Now, let me introduce our speakers. We have Agnieszka Skonieczna, who is the Head of Unit for Investment Conditions and Public Services at DG GROW, the Commission's Directorate for the Internal Market and Industry. We have Arto Maninen, Rector of the University of Oulu in Finland. We have David Luengo, who is the head of the Brussels office of Indra, a Spanish company that specializes in transport, air traffic, and defense. And we have Tor Grande, rector of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And we should shortly be joined by Lina Galvez Munoz, member of the European Parliament, who's just there at the back. Can I welcome you on stage, Lina? In a second. Great. So as we wait for Lina, perhaps it's time to start. The first question that I wanted to ask, I wanted to establish a benchmark for how much change is needed. See if we're in agreement, if some of us think that more change is needed, some of us perhaps think that the way things work right now are completely fine. So who would like to go first and share how much change they believe should be brought to collaborative R&D policy in the EU? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I can as well start. Thank you, Koda. Yes, change is needed, that's for sure, but not at the expense of the progress already made. So Horizon Europe has already demonstrated the power of collaborative R&D, yet the balance between fundamental research and industrial application needs refinement, that's for sure. Europe is strong in producing high-quality research, but translating this into competitive innovation lags behind with our global competitors and other global players. This catching up, what is required is, to my opinion, is less about restructuring at the drawing board, and it's more about ensuring that excellent research is better supported throughout the innovation cycle, while keeping long-term scientific excellence at the core. For example, EU partnerships could be improved and developed further to achieve this. And since I'm a Finn, I can't resist to mention that we now have a law that R&I investments will be 4% from GDP. And there is, of course, many countries in Europe who could also improve their national R&I expenditure.
Okay, so balance changes. David, do you agree?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and congratulations to the team in science business as well. Not only science, it's also business. Yeah. For this awesome event. I think it's very useful, very, very valuable for all of us.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
On the collaborative research and development within the EU framework, because we are talking about the EU and the EU policies and the EU mechanics and the EU mechanisms and the EU tools. For me, I think this is the collaborative research and development is not an option, is compulsory. We are forced to collaborate in research and development. Collaboration is a way of working. Collaboration means that you put efforts together, you put resources together, You work together with a sense of purpose, trying to achieve a goal, and then in a trustful environment, the most trustful, the better, but with a sense of purpose. And for me, the sense of purpose is the policy of the EU. So when some years ago we had this conversation on partnerships, I was in a certain way involved as an industry, as a stakeholder of the policymakers, and the most valuable lesson that we have learned from the current framework program on partnerships is that they are very useful and very successful when they follow the policy. For instance, I'll give you an example, and I will be short. The single European sky, which is something that may be far away, but we are using it on a daily basis when we fly. The fact of having the industry, the research centers, specializing entities on developing, I don't know, technologies or concepts of operation, etc., together with the customers, which means the operators of the airspace, is a good thing because you are agreeing on a technology roadmap, you are agreeing on which are the priorities, you are agreeing on what kind of technologies can be already validated because the TRL is high enough, and you put that into operation, and et cetera, et cetera. So it means that you have focus on what needs to be done, and the money coming from the EU framework program in this case, but also when it is about deploying the technologies from other entities of the EU, is an incentive. It's not only the money, the cash for your operation, it's the incentive to collaborate. So that I will keep it. I will keep it in the next framework program. There can be improvements, for sure. You can always improve. You can always learn from lessons and then try to go one step further. But for a business, I think this way of doing innovation is a good thing.
Okay, so staying strategic is the message. Okay, Lina, perhaps you could contribute.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and sorry for being late. We get lost in this amazing and nice building, but we managed to arrive. And well, I think no one in this room, I'm sure, believe we don't need a change. I think everybody agrees on that, and also that we really need it fast. That is very important. But I agree that it also building up on what we have already, what we have achieved already. It is, I think it's not very realistic to think that the modeling, whatever place works very well, so let's bring it here and import it here. It doesn't work at all. Because we are different, we are diverse, and we have a strength in certain aspects and not in others. So we really need to adapt. So obviously, I also agree that to cooperate within the European Union is a must, but also beyond. I think this is a must too. We have enlarged quite a lot our partners on the framework program. A few very important countries has really been associated now with the framework program. Some of them are back, like the UK, but we have also Korea, we have New Zealand. We have very interested partners now with us, and I think this has been, we have now a Norwegian representative now, so this is really important that we really look beyond the European Union and to really cooperate, and also for that we need a good governance, we need resources, we need finance, and but a lot of coordination and the right institutions to make that happen. Probably we will talk later on about that, and so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay, and let's hear from Norway then, on that note.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very great event. I think with the Draghi report and the sense of urgency and the call to action, I think all agree upon. But I think it's also quite important just to recognize what's already been said earlier today, that we really need a framework program. It's not a discussion about that. And I think also coming from the university, I think it's important to see the importance of collaborative research between industry and academia. I think that's a key to that for disruptive technology and so on. But I think one thing not mentioned so far today is one of the challenges is how to deal with higher security and dual use. How is that will be dealt with in the next framework program?
Okay, fantastic. And so, can I put the same question to the audience then? Perhaps, is there anyone here who thinks we need a revolution? Or perhaps anyone here who thinks we don't need any change at all? Any outlier opinions? No?
I can answer that, if I may, or
Yeah,
maybe please.
of course.
I can just maybe also to say, because I wouldn't agree also as the speaker said, that specifically when we zoom out, because I think the Draghi report and Heitor comes very clearly that Europe is punching below its weight. I think that when it comes to public investment and the impact that we are having on our funding. And this is the element why, how do we bring the issues, how do research translate into manufacturing opportunities in Europe? How do we bring the scale up? How do we ensure the impact that we have on our funding? And the element is that our industrial and research policies are very fragmented in the EU, between EU and member states. And the element is collaboration is what pulls resources and elements together, what helps us by achieving scale, and also connecting the very good resources that we have, because the skilled workforce, amazing researchers, the infrastructure that we have, we can only do that when we do that together. And I think this collaboration helps us in that angle. I have some examples of those that I'm happy also to share through the panel, but maybe here just staying short and sweet.
Okay, and so can I ask you then, your focus area is finding links between industrial policy
Yes.
and research policy. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's going? What are the biggest challenges? And what's the Commission doing on this right now?
Very happy, and as you probably know, that coming from DG GROW, I would of course say that it's very important that those two policies go very much hand in hand. And why is it important? And I think that this is good to zoom out a little bit, also coming from the positives, from the fact that we have a very strong industrial base and still very strong position in the global markets. But this position is being very much challenged. We are losing the edge on advanced technologies with the US. The same also with China is rapidly catching up. And on top of that, the root cause is also the innovation challenge. We are unable to translate what we just mentioned through the panel, our research into marketable products, services, and we also have a trouble in integrating the advanced technologies into our industrial base. The diffusion, the use of AI, and also our other technologies is still very complicated. But also, there are other factors weighing in on competitiveness of our industry, high energy prices, and of course, all the issues that you discussed in before sessions about the importance of resilience and security. So Europe being highly dependent on critical inputs and also very highly condensed supply chains. All these issues mean that having technological leadership and industrial leadership is extremely important for us to ensure we can provide the goods, essential goods for our citizens. You might remember all the issues from the COVID about masks, about the vaccines, about also defense now capabilities, all the elements that having industrial leadership is extremely important for us to provide for our citizens. And this is why it's important to invest in the best ideas. And this is why I think that research and industrial policy have to go hand in hand to ensure that we give that to our citizens. And going to the concrete example that I mentioned, we work, as DG GROW, we work in Cluster 4 on Horizon. We work on industry, digital, and space. That's the cluster. And this issue of the heavy dependence on critical raw materials that you might know, we are heavily dependent from third country sourcing. And we need those materials to produce aspects like batteries, like also drones, all the elements that we would want for our security, we need critical raw materials for that. Lithium is one of those where we need them for batteries, for electric cars. However, we are heavily dependent on other third country sources. But however, we have lithium deposit in Europe, 27. So we have a project, and I'm super happy to mention that because it's coordinated by Finland and with participation of Oulu University, when they have 15 partners looking together how we could use those deposits in an environmental friendly, societally acceptable, and also a good for industry way. We are starting with 4 test cases to combining geology, universities, companies to see how we could do that with 0 waste and also recovering as much as we can. And the issue comes, so pooling resources, what we discussed. Second, scalability. So they also start with all the IT tools to have what we call a digital twin, so your virtual avatar, to make sure that we can then replicate it to 27 deposits. And I also want to underline, it's not only about advanced technology that we would use to solve a big problem for industry and for Europe resilience, but also it connects all the researchers that work in the mines, at universities in geology to exchange the knowledge. And also we miss those skills. We have missed a lot of mining expertise, so on, and connecting those bits together along the whole value chain helps us. And I mean, this is the project that for me, as an example, very much illustrates the potential of bringing industry and research policy together with the strategic focus, with the scale that we need, and with pooling resources.
Okay, and that's a great example. But how do we replicate this on a massive scale in lots of different areas, right? Because Europe's competitiveness right now depends on action across so many technologies. So how do you think there is something to be done in policy, in European policy, that could help scale this up from a few projects to across the board? And David, we'll come back to you perhaps in a second if you want to answer the question, Agnieszka?
I can maybe just, because I don't want to monopolize also the discussion and aspect, because you touch upon, Goda, very much the issue where I wanted to move second on the where do we need fixing. And I think the scaling up is where we are not good in Europe currently. And I want to underline, it's not about scaling up companies only, because we know we don't have the deep pockets of capital for those companies. They go and look for capital outside of the EU, but the same happens on the scaling up projects. Because when we go to the higher TRLs, a different level of the capital, but also different aspects are needed. So that's the aspect of the money that we have, but also the aspect of thinking about exploitation strategies from the outset of the project. This is what we see when looking at the manufacturing aspect, that when you think about standards, intellectual property, exploitation strategy, business model, and the markets, this also helps all the projects scaling up and designing. But I think that probably this is also something that David might want to touch upon.
Yes. No, I connecting to what you are saying and coming back to the question of we need a revolution. Change is moving the world. We are in a transformative process all the time. But I don't think a revolution is necessary. It's rather evolution rather than revolution. In the sense that we can improve things, I said it before. For me, one of the last words you mentioned, market. We need to be closer to the market. We put a lot of focus on the supply side of the market, on how to incentivize companies, how to incentivize the supply chains, how to better improve the way we manage more efficiency. What about the demand side? What about the market? What about the customer? I think we need to be much more customer-oriented in the sense of that when I am investing in innovation. Look, the theory of management in the 60s, last century, already said the 2 main functions of a business is marketing and innovation. Marketing in the sense of understanding the needs of the customer. What does he or she needs? How can I improve my products to attend the needs of the customer? And this is innovation, marketing, innovation. So paying more attention to the market, paying more attention to the demand side, paying more attention of the needs of the market, for me is absolutely essential. And this is why I'm saying that the research and development cannot be done in a silo, only in a lab. Yes, what you do in a lab is fundamental. And this is why it's called fundamental research. But it has to be continuously thinking on what is the problem I want to solve. And you cannot lose focus on that. Because if you lose focus, you don't scale up. And this is when, again, this debate in Brussels, we've had this debate for ages, the famous Valley of Death. This is the difference, in my humble opinion, this is one of the differences between the way we do innovation in the US and the way we do innovation in Europe. We have many complexities in Europe, but for me, one of the things is the mindset that we have in the European Union ecosystem, that we don't focus too much in the market, in the customer.
Yeah, okay, so a clear focus on demand rather than supply. And I'll come back to you in a second. Alina also raised her hand. Sorry.
Thank you. So I would like to come back, because the example from the Commission, Francesca, is very interesting, and critical raw materials, how also to use some digital twins and to really to replicate it everywhere. So it is really a very good example, and you ask how really to spread it to other sectors. But the thing is also that this is a top-down example, but innovation is also bottom-up. And that is, the thing became more complex, how to build up that ecosystem that will really make flourish this bottom-up innovation. So this is something we really need to, for that, I think, and I go back to this idea that the framework program is important, and we need a standalone program, not to be part of the competitiveness fund, because otherwise this bottom-up innovation will be difficult, and or at least difficult for smaller players, both universities, but also innovators and so on and so forth. So this is one thing I'd like to mention, that probably top-down it is good for certain issues, but we should not forget the bottom-up. And for that, we really need a standalone framework program on research and innovation. And the other thing I would like to say is regarding market. And obviously, whatever we do to increase our market and to advance in a single market that we know we don't still have a single market in finance, where it was very clear, or in energy, in very, very key parts, connectivity, very key parts for our competitiveness that will be very good and essential, not only good, must again, and we really need to move on that fast. But one important thing also to boost innovation, because innovation could flourish everywhere, not only in certain places of Europe or in certain places of the world, is that we do that also with cohesion, and trying to make a geographical balance of all of that. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to sustain politically the European Union project, because innovation tries to concentrate in all the few places, and we don't have a fiscal union. If we were having a fiscal union, probably we could speak of a different way, but we don't. And unless we have one, we really need to take care to cohesion and to geographical balance very much. Otherwise, we could risk to lose our political project.
Of course, yes, cohesion and bottom-up research should not be forgotten in this push for competitiveness. And I want to come back to the future framework program, FP10, in a second. But Tor, you wanted to share your thoughts on the question?
Just to add to this, is I think it's a bit out of my comfort zone. I think to see policies in together, I think at least one of the main issues here is also that the R&D investment in the European, the existing industry is too low. So you also have to stimulate that actually they have a higher R&D investment, not only to support existing technology, actually transfer existing technology.
Yeah, no, of course, that's a very important point. Okay, and if we could shift our focus now to FP10 and perhaps still Horizon Europe, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about was about the balance between supporting industry and supporting European competitiveness and not forgetting disruptive technologies as well. This is something, Tor, you actually wanted to talk about. You mentioned it when we spoke before. So would you like to open this conversation?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's in a way it's you have to have two thoughts at the same time, because you have to have new research and development innovation, which brings new and emerging technologies to the market. But secondly, you also have to have research and development supporting the green and the digital transition or the existing transition. So you basically need both. Also, I think so the balance here between those two It may be the key here, so that you're able to, first of all, also to harvest new ideas based on basic science and blue sky science and so on. But you also need to find mechanism in order to also implement, let's say, disruptive technologies in existing technologies, like renewables, AI, and so on. So to find this balance, I think that's really a key when you're talking about the next framework program.
Arto, can I ask you for your opinion as a fellow rector?
Yes, I think Thor mentioned pretty much the essential part that the framework should support both. And so we need to invest on disruptive technologies because that's where we get the inventions. And the inventions can be innovations in certain point. But same time, we need to support the existing industries and like green and digital transition was mentioned already. So I fully agree on that. Maybe one thing to add what Thor said is that we should maybe somehow improve the use of previous results from the EU-funded research projects. We don't have a full access to the results of the other projects, so that might help in this big picture.
Okay, and David, from industry perspective.
Yes, no, I just wanted to ask a question here. Who has read the competitiveness compass? Almost everybody, you see. So the 27 pages of this compass can be summarized in 3 points. Closing the innovation gap, joint roadmap for competitiveness, plenty of actions there, a lot of paper in the next months and years, and reducing excessive dependencies. And for me, this is the key point. Disruptive technologies are okay. There is a lot of talent, of know-how in our universities, in our research centers. But I think we need, again, to focus on what are the current needs of the market and what European sectors, different sectors are needing is to close the gap as well in dependencies. In COVID, we realized that we were dependent on almost everything. Masks, the most basic things that we can imagine, we were not able to produce them. Don't forget that, because I think that when we talk about disruptive technologies, we need to think on how can we embed these disruptive technologies in our supply chains, in our capacities, in our capabilities to produce solutions to the market that will be needed, that are needed, because the customers are asking for that. So I give you an example. We are working in a partnership, the rail joint undertaking. Rail is a sector, allow me to say, a little bit based on safety, a little bit old-fashioned, if you like. But the tremendous effort that companies, stakeholders are doing in this sector to introduce digital technologies. I mean, there is a huge panoply of digital technologies that can be introduced, but you need to put them into a concept of operation where the basic principle is safety. So you need to balance as well. And for me, the most relevant thing is to pay attention to what the needs of the users, the needs of the people are in order to introduce this technology. But we need obviously to invest, and to invest in talent. For me, the skills is the basics of everything.
Okay, but so we know our needs more or less. We have a strategy, right? The Draghi report set out what Europe needs to do, and now the competitiveness compass has done essentially a similar exercise, but with more meat on it. But is this pathway actually clear enough? Is the competitiveness compass clear enough, in what needs to be done? Lena, would you like to comment?
Money, I don't think it is clear enough. That's basically the answer. Probably I could develop more, but basically if there is no fresh money, this is not enough. Because now there is a lot of tensions already with the MFF, a lot of tensions. And since we really need to stand a long program for the framework program, but there is a lot of tensions. We have new needs in defense, for instance. We want to do more things together, but if there is no more common budget, it will be really difficult to do what it is in the competitiveness compass. So this is, this is a limitation, and I think it's the main problem of this competitive compass. Then there are other things that probably are missing or would like to see more, that competitiveness is more clear based on innovation, not on reducing labor cost, on labor rights, whatever, and many other things. But these are things that could be improved, and it is a different way just to explain what competitiveness is. But the problem of the financing and this competitiveness fund, how it will be, and where the money will come from, and that it will be different from the framework program or not. These are questions that are still open, and unless, I insist, there is fresh money for that, or new money for that, the tensions within the multi-annual financial framework will be very, very big, especially regarding the framework program. So this is, in my opinion, the main problem of this competitiveness.
And I mean, it's at the back of everyone's minds, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to get these answers now. But Agnieszka, can I ask you, are there any funds that you imagine right now in the EU budget that are underused for collaborative R&D?
Maybe to start, maybe to start also from the broader picture, because the element is that I think that Draghi analysis is, and the diagnosis is very clear. And I think that the aspect that I also highlighted, we have been knowing them for a while. No wonder investment in R&D and investment by our private sector, the value of debt that has been mentioned. I think these problems we have been looking at or identified for a while. And the aspect is that Draghi is saying, look, we are sleepwalking. We need to do something about it. And diagnosis is quite clear around the 3 pillars that David mentioned. And the compass is saying, look, we need to now act, is the speed, agility that we need to do, and around the 3 pillars, because only together we are able to address it. And one aspect that is very crucial, also when the Draghi says about 800 billion, is only a small part of that needs to come from the public resources. We need to be much better at mobilizing and what I also call de-risking private funding about it. And there are the different dimensions to it. There is a dimension where we need to have our savings being channeled much more into productive investments. I think here there is a trouble that I call it maybe a bit of a lazy money, that our money does not work as effectively for the capital markets as it does in the US. That's the one way, how do we channel this money? The second aspect is how do we de-risk better and give more incentives for the private investment. We underinvest in R&I, but also in industrial policies from our sectors, but also from the perspective of our static, not very dynamic industrial structure. How do we bring in this dynamism with the startups and scale-up, but also how do we incentivize the traditional industries to invest more in R&D? Because the element which I also like to mention that whenever we talk about investing and having more manufacturing aspect, this goes hand in hand with having more R&D. The research shows that if you think about producing more in Europe, you have to have persistent R&D efforts in scientific R&D, in IT, in data. It goes hand in hand, so we are very much interconnected. And to your question about the tools, we also think a lot about the risking aspects like loans, equity, guarantees. We have a program that we run together with partners like European Investment Bank, EIF, and also all other partners called InvestEU, which is about de-risking and facilitating access to funding, more from the perspective of repayable instruments, of course. So you look more at individual projects and you go via banks and funds, but it's extremely important that we leverage more private money. We will not solve our problems with public funding. But in public funding, we also face the difficulties of complexity that we hear from all the stakeholders about the focus, combining how do we allow for curiosity-driven research and strategic focus, and also fragmentation between the EU and member states. Because one fact is that we invest basically the same amount as US is, be it industrial and investment aspect, but we do not get the same impact. So we need to think how collectively we can get it together. And I often also bring the example of important projects of common European interest. These are also research breakthrough research innovation projects that are not done with framework program, but are done with state aid, so with competition policies, and they look at very large-scale, big technologies like hydrogen, batteries, where we would want to make a breakthrough, like Europe. And there, in 10 of these IPCIs, we have more than 30 billion public money from member states together, which led to over 60 billion of private. So we have 100 billion of catalyzation for key strategic technologies. For me, it shows that Europe, when we get our act together and pool forces, we can do that. It's around aligning ourselves about strategic aspect where we want to go as a unit. And if we do that together, then we show that we can make it. I have very much, high hopes on this aspect, because when we surmount the fragmentation, we are capable of achieving quite a lot from those proposals. And also, when we look at the participants in those projects, we have almost more than 200 direct participants, but almost more 2,000 of companies and of research and others that work in ecosystem around those projects. And I think this is where bottom-up on the ground we can show the change, which also translates higher up in our advances in science and technology.
Okay, and so I want to shift the conversation a little bit towards framework programs. Let's say the competitiveness compass, works, and we see all of this money flowing into industry, into R&D. At that level, where does this leave the framework programs, in particular Framework Program 10? What kind of investments need to be made there? If we have industry that's ready to scale up, what should the framework programs fund, and should they contribute towards knowledge translation and scaling up technology? And to what extent? Perhaps the universities would like to contribute? Yeah, Tor.
Can I start?
Go on.
Yeah. I think since we are in a session with focus on collaborative research, I think first of all that will also should based on, for example, partnership, but it also would encourage higher R&D investment also in the private sector. And I think it's the collaboration between academia and industry is actually quite important in that context. But I'm also really concerned that we are talking about collaborative research and there's a basic science as two different disciplines. I think it's not a linear relationship here. So I think we have to actually make a much stronger connection between the basic science, ERC, for example, and also the current Pillar 2. Because it's more like a helix than a linear process. So you have to overlap. It's the same environment has to be engaged both in basic science and in collaborative research. Then you can actually have the benefits of both.
Okay, and can I ask, I think in the competitiveness compass, there's a recommendation to bridge closer links between the European Research Council and the European Innovation Council. What do you think of that idea, if you don't mind me asking?
I think it's the key here is actually to kind of benefit from what's coming out of basic science, also in, for example, in existing technologies, to find better interactions, so to speak. And I think that's still something where not only Pillar 3, but also Pillar 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a few words to continue. Again, Thor, thank you. You put out pretty nicely what I had also in mind. So the gap in scaling up technology, that remains, that's for sure. And if I get back what you said in the last, that may or your last question, that I think one maybe detail could be that, for example, the EIC accelerator could be more seamlessly connected to the framework program to ensure that these promising research results don't get lost to these funding silos. So this is quite concrete idea, something could be done. Also, a little bit continuing what Thor also already said, we should somehow make a smoother transition from the lower TRL level projects to the higher TRLs, and to develop something within the framework program on that.
Okay, and Elena, did you want to?
Well, yes, I would like to insist that yes, and this idea that we really need to give science space to this bottom up, and this is ERC basically, and researchers are very worried And they are coming to us very much saying, well, listen, what will happen if we are very much focused on competitiveness, on these gaps, wherever? Yes, it is very good because we will be able, but on the other hand, innovation and research is sometimes you don't know what is going to come, or you don't know what this innovation will arrive. So I think this is very important to maintain. But also there are some tools within the framework program that we could improve even more. EIC, of course, I agree with what has been said. But also EIT, for instance, that is this place where universities, education, research, education, and business really meet in order to do it in a collaborative way, and also geographically, because the different KICs, knowledge and innovation communities, could be found in different places of Europe. It is true that there are still some concentration in some parts of Europe, and this is something we try to change and to improve when we did the recast and the strategy of the EIT. But still there is probably a tool we really need to explore or to improve. And there are other things we have. We have the Partnership for Regional Innovation, trying to put together innovators, or the innovation valleys. And well, we are trying. That's the reality. We are trying, but obviously must need to be done. And at the end, yes, it is true that we really need to be better on leveraging private money. But at the end, it will be still a huge part that needs to be filled with public money, because it will be too risky or too uncertain. Like, well, basic research, obviously, but not only. And this is obviously, a balance we really need to find, but we have to be better, of course, with leveraging private money, and for that, to improve the single market and also the financing. I mean, we have as many startups as the US. The only problem we have, they just escape because of better financing or better possibility of scaling up. But on that, and this is the last thing, skills, and to invest in a more cooperative and more comprehensive way of skilling, upskilling. It is, I think, essential, as well as attracting talent. In the Heitor report, there is something I like very much, this Choose Europe. And now I think it is the moment also to make a lot of people to choose Europe. And we have to be also very good on retaining our own talent, but also on attracting our own talent. Because if we go to the Silicon Valley and all these places, what they are very good at is at attracting talent. So we have to really work on this Choose Europe thing.
Yeah, skills are a key piece of the puzzle. David, you wanted to speak, but
if I'm not wrong, your question relates to the governance of the framework program, how we organize the ERC, how we align the forces, ERC, EAC. Is a matter of governance, right?
Yeah.
For me, the governance should respond to the sense of purpose. What do we want to achieve? And then once we realize what we want to achieve, then we structure ourselves and we structure the network. The network follows the purpose. I'll give you an example. Are we competitive in clean energy technologies? If I see the latest developments in the market, I would say that the most competitive today are the Chinese. By the way, there was a meeting in DigiGrow day before yesterday, organized by Roman, on what is the current status of the Chinese technologies in the market related to photovoltaics, to solar panels, they are better, cheaper. So if we want to compete in a sector which is, as Lydia said, is as an enabler for our own competitiveness, we need to align all forces. Research and innovation is a policy itself, and we can organize through a system of governance, funding from public money, Of course, private money, without private money, it won't fly. But we need to not only to think about research innovation as a policy itself, it's also an enabler for other policies. So for the energy policy, research and innovation is a fundamental factor. So we need to understand where do we want to be in the next 10 years in the energy market, precisely to build up the single market, precisely to connect to the new elements of the network, renewable energies. How are we going to create this density that we need? It's not only gas and petrol, it's sun, it's wind, the density of the network will be incredibly bigger. We need technology for that. Are we investing enough? Are we doing our work on that? Apparently, according to the market parameters, we are not. So then we have a gap.
Yeah, but so at higher TRL levels, obviously it's important to think strategically. But in the framework programs, we also have, bottom-up science, as Lena mentioned, which is very important. It's important to preserve it. And I think Arto mentioned that there's this problem of translation between this bottom-up science and these lower TRL levels and the higher TRL levels at which we have to think more strategically, as you say. But how do we bridge the two philosophies, essentially, of basic science, well, not basic science, but lower TRLs, and the higher ones? Do you have any thoughts on that? Either, yeah.
One suggestion is that maybe benchmark the situation in Finland. We have this, well, first of all, the law I mentioned, that the RDI expenses should be 4%, half from industry, half from private sector, half from public, and based on this, there is this locomotive program at Business Finland, where I don't know if the locomotive is a correct translation, but anyways, there, let's say the companies and academia are forced to work together. Neither gets money, public money, if we don't collaborate. And of course, the targets for the industry are higher TRL, more on the development side, and the academia is more on the lower TRLs. And in these programs, actually, it works, that it goes from the lower TRL up to the very high TRL levels. So something has been done well. But I don't know the details. I wish I would have the silver bullet. I could say now, one sentence, there you go. But I don't.
Yeah, but it's reassuring. Yeah, Tor.
I guess this is about the challenge or to find a mechanism which would lead to some kind of enhanced focus on some critical technologies or areas. And I don't think that's a new discussion in Europe, as far as I understand. So to be more strategic and focused, I think that maybe the question is, or the answer is yes. But I have some concerns with what is suggested in the Heitor report with two councils. I'm not sure if it's a good idea to separate these into a technology and a societal. I think they have to work together. And I think it's also a matter of representation if you have a council like that. Representation, I mean, if you only have, for example, the current industry, then it has a tendency to go to higher TRL levels and maybe not harvesting, let's say, for a lower, because I think you also need lower TRL levels also within the existing technology. This is an area I know quite well is, for example, metal production. If you would like to have metal production in Europe also in the future, and I think we will, that industry also has to become green, producing metals, for example, without emission. Then you actually need low TRL levels. So it's about representation. And the third concern is, the interaction between the ERC and the EIC, back to the previous discussion. So there are some concerns with the governance structure, if you can call it that, presented.
Yeah. But it's a viable alternative, right? And perhaps if we need to rethink the way we're doing collaborative R&D, maybe it is a good idea on some level. But can we hear from industry on whether these sorts of councils or one council would be welcome?
No clue. I mean, I don't know. For me, the model we have today with partnerships is sufficiently well focused to attend, as I've been saying the whole morning, to follow the policy. I don't care about the politics. I prefer to talk about the policies. Understand me well. Huh?
Yeah.
These two gentlemen know much better than me how to structure the governance of the research and development in a collaborative way. What I see from industry is that I need to focus on the return on the investment I make in research and development, because I do invest. I mean, this is not a cash point, I take the money and I run. I am co-investing in the partnership. I am putting my resources together with others for a joint endeavor. And we have some goals that we need to achieve, yes or yes. Maybe we fail, and we accept that we fail. But the sense of purpose is to achieve the goal through co-investment. If we do it in a more centralized way or a less centralized way, or a more extended in geographic terms or less extended in geographic terms, is not for industry to decide, I believe. What we want to be is active, proactive in defining the goals and defining the sense of purpose.
Okay, but partnerships kind of work in silos. So do you think?
Well,
there's
sometimes
an
it's not
issue of,
about silos,
you know,
it's about
industry talking
areas
to
of
each other, but not
expertise.
among themselves.
A partnership on medicines, I suppose that our industry that is producing medicine and is investing in capabilities and is investing in procedures and skills and certifications and etc. This is a huge investment and a huge structure of costs. I suppose that what they want to be is being part of the partnership together with their stakeholders, not with people coming from I don't know where. It's not a matter of silo, it's a matter of an area of expertise.
Okay. And Lena wanted to contribute.
One thing, I mean, the partnerships, some of them are working quite well, others are not working that well, I will say. But in any case, what we need to make sure also is that they would not bring us to oligopolies within those sectors, because otherwise, not monopoly, obviously not, oligopoly is not good for innovation either. So we really need to make sure that newcomers could arrive to those sectors. So probably also we have to work with these sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes, experimental, also experimental regulation, and I think that will be very good also for newcomers to play in those sectors, because some of those sectors we have this partnership are composed mainly by very big actors, and I'm not saying that we'll reach colluding agreements or whatever. I'm not saying that, but it is obvious that it is very difficult to get into as a newcomer into this a more mature or oligopolistic sectors, and we really need to make sure that this happen. Otherwise, innovation, it is tough and it is more difficult. And just to ERC and EIC should be different, not merge.
Yeah, but there's been a concerted effort, right, to bring in more newcomers to the partnerships under Horizon Europe. So we'll see if that bears fruit. Arto, you wanted to?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with all the three who has already said so. There's so many things. So I think my opinion is also that maybe concentrate more on developing these partnerships. And especially what Lena said, that we should somehow make that the newcomers can join in an early enough stage. Mm-hmm. That's very important. That should be somehow how taken care. Also, if we are not listened and these stakeholder councils are anyway created, the composition we have to carefully think about, like Thor mentioned, that it can't be only industry partners. We need to have a strong participation from academia, startups, civil society, and so on. So we have to have the diversity there. Maybe just add up, which is kind of known for everyone, but having these councils, I'm not sure if we really need to add another component to complicate even more the landscape we have today. That quite often leads to more cost and bureaucracy.
Yeah, no. That's a good point.
You.
Agnieszka, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute, because listening to the discussion, I also wonder sometimes whether we do not put our questions wrongly, because sometimes we operate with a question either or. No, isn't it an and? Isn't it that we need both a strategic focused sense of purpose, and we also need to allow for curiosity, for aspect of it, because innovation follows very unpredictable paths. And I think that in the union we often operate a lot with and. No, we want and sustainable, environmental friendly, and good for business. I mean, we need to think together, looking at the constraints, and operate more with an and rather than or, because or puts a zero-sum game. And also what Thor has said, like in this aspect of the non-linearity between research and getting the results, allowing for the side doors. We want an investment journey that is very seamless from research to market, but there are also side doors that needs to be there to allow to pivot, to change with the market. And I think this aspect of flexibility, side door, and looking at the feedback loop that we need between both basic to higher, to with universities and industries. I think it's something that we need really to allow to have this delivering the results that we need. I think that it's operating more with and puts us like towards where do we want to go in terms of solution and getting the results that we want from the perspective of industrial leadership.
Yeah, but I would say it's a matter of resources as well, right? If we had unlimited resources, going and would be great, because we would be able to do it, but it has to be or sometimes, because we simply cannot fund it all.
I would probably add that there are, I think Nina said that we have a pockets of excellence everywhere in Europe, and I think like because sometimes when you look at newspapers today, it's all doom and gloom and everything. I think that there's a lot of very positive signs happening in Europe. We, as continent, create the most of the startups. You have excellent incubators and accelerators. When you connect it all, we have a lot of strengths as Europe. So I think that resources, for me, is the aspect pulling them together, going together in the same direction, gets that. Because if we start thinking in limiting ourselves, we don't find solutions. I think that it's also the rephrasing the question on the aspect that when we pull aspects together, we can deliver.
Okay, should we finish on that positive note then?
Thank you.
Pam, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the audience.